Alright, so we're going to talk about resentment. Someone asked a funny question. It is a funny question. It's a funny question. What's the root of it? I've been contemplating lots about roots. You know, in the West, we want to know why am I triggered? Why am I resentful? Why am I enraged? Why? In the West, we ask the why question a lot. And actually, someone asked me, I think yesterday, why does he have this addiction? Why does he have this weird thing or this something else? Why? It's like a strange fascination that we have in the West with why our mind works the way it works. Because there's one lady. She told me that she spent 20 years once a week with a psychoanalyst, understanding why. Clearly still needed to see me, so something wasn't working, and not for lack of effort. 20 years, that's pretty committed. 30 years, people do that. I have nothing against analysis. I have a little interest in it myself, because it's all about why. And I'm just going to give you a very simple, and then people start asking why around resentment, or its offshoots, anger, and, why am I angry? Why am I resentful? So, this may or may not be popular, but I'll just say it how I see it, which is, we've talked in the past about the levels of consciousness. Subconsciousness and unconscious. So basically, we have levels of consciousness, and this is how big they are. So your consciousness is tiny. I drew it way too big. I can't draw it small enough. That's how tiny it is. Your subconscious is bigger, way bigger, and your unconscious is like even way bigger than that. This doesn't do it justice. So consciousness, I'm going to sort of illustrate it another way. So if 10 units was the size of your conscious capacity to hold thought, most humans, they can think about 5-10 things at any given time. I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm sad, what am I going to eat for dinner? Like 5 things. Women can do more, 10 things, 15 things. People who are really smart, maybe 20 things. But that's the capacity. Consciously. Subconsciously, let's just call it, maybe 10 trillion units. That's probably an underestimation. Trillion is, for those of you who don't know, trillion is, let's actually illustrate it. What is a trillion? So there's 10, and then so that was 10,000, and then a million, and then a billion, and then a trillion. So that's 10 trillion. That's the size of that number. Meaning, it's a lot bigger than 10. And then unconscious is, let's go trillion, trillion, zillion, and I'm just going to make some words. Gazillion, which isn't a real word, but we don't have a real word to describe the vastness of unconsciousness. But it's a lot bigger than subconscious, and it's way, way bigger than your consciousness. So, simple mathematics. If you can do if you can process 10 units a day of material, how long is it going to take for you to figure out 10 trillion units of subconscious material that constitutes the why you do what you do? How long is it going to take you?
You never achieved it.
Well, never say never. I mean,
Trillion days.
it might take a while.
Trillion days.
How many?
Trillion.
Trillion. Good, you got it,
Maybe
right?
in another lifetime. Or a few more.
Just do the math, right? Okay, let's say it's 10 units a day, so 10 trillion days. There's 365
Just X the cereals in between.
days in like a year. Like we're talking millions of years. How old does a human live?
100 if you're getting it, you're like
72 is the average age of men. 82 is the average age of women. These last stats I checked. I'm trying to be facetious here at how silly this question is why do you do what you do? It's actually silly, and it's a waste of your time. But you waste time, and that's why you're here. So humans, we how many of you have bought a gym membership just to buy a gym membership but never used it? Yeah, come on,
Or you use it once.
or you use it, but you keep paying for it, right? You just it's there, maybe you want to go, maybe. There's actually studies around this. An entrepreneur was telling me, if you charge someone's credit card less than $15 a month, they're likely to just forget about it. So then these companies, they price things at less than $15 a month so that you just keep paying whether you use it or not. When it goes above that, people start like, oh, that's a lot of money.
That's why the TV subscriptions are dangerous.
So they add up, don't they? So what I'm trying to get at here is it feels good. Oh, that's why. That's why I got angry. That's why I was rageful on Fridays, because my spouse did this, this, and this. But did you really get to the root of that? Did you really get to what you did to produce the spouse? It's his response on that day. Did you get to the what your spouse did to produce your response, to produce their response, to produce their response, to your response, to the rage? Did you really get to the root? When you start going towards roots, you start realizing that it's multi-dimensional. The roots of things are always multi-dimensional. That's why this number is so high. Contrary to popular belief, we don't forget anything in life. Nothing is, our information storage system is perfect. It forgets nothing. It doesn't forget the cigarette smoke your mom had when you were 6 months in the womb. I wouldn't have believed that until I did processing with someone who remembered that. And I was like, seriously? And I thought she made it up. And then trauma therapists, we work, in these weird states. But again and again, people remember, oh yeah, my parents were having an argument at 8 months. Or people can remember birth histories, even though they don't have access to birth histories. And then they confirm them later on that, there were forceps used in the delivery. What I'm trying to tell you is that our capacity to hold on to information is incredibly vast, and any one of those things can become a root. So here's what roots are. Roots are like these little needles in a haystack. So I just drew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This constitutes your roots as to why you were resentful. Just, that's all you gotta do. Recovery right there, go find them. Go find the 7 dots in the gazillion, trillion. Let me know when you got that done. You'll be good. If you have a gambling problem, okay, put a couple more dots in there. Are you really going to succeed in finding them? You might find one. Chances are you'll find, some things in the general area. But every time I thought I knew where somebody's roots were, when we do the trauma work, it's not what we thought it was. We thought it was mom, but in the end it was dad. We thought it was dad, and in the end it was mom, or grandparent, or who the heck knows. But you know what happens? This process of asking why and getting stuck on why, the consciousness is tiny, but it's powerful. It determines what is allowed to go forward and what is the function of consciousness is, I call it the captain of the ship. It sets direction. Even though it doesn't know much, even though it's limited in its scope, the consciousness sets the direction that the human goes in. So, have you ever been in a job where the boss is incompetent? Really? Just one? So, कोई job जिथे boss ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਦਾ. Or just he doesn't know how to do the job.
I don't know how to blame the boss.
Okay, so most people have, or if you read one of those Dilbert cartoons, it's all predicated around how bosses don't know necessarily. Does that company run well when the boss doesn't know what's going on? Does the boss get in the way? Yeah, why don't you do this thing? And then they don't know that that's going to create 50 piles of work that have nothing to do with the essential product that the customer needs. Can you ignore a boss, though? You can't ignore your boss. You can try. It's not a pleasant existence when you ignore your boss. Your consciousness is the captain of your ship. It is limited as to what you do with it. It can set direction. It can say, yeah, I agree with this, go ahead. So the consciousness can say, you know what, root is important. I'm resentful, and it's very important to understand why. So spend 20 years and keep digging. Keep digging. The captain has the right to set the ship. It's direction, right? But a wise captain will say, I don't really know how engineering works. I don't really know how the engine and all that. I'm just going to hire a good engineer, and I'm going to just tell the engineer what I want. And so the wise captain knows there's an architecture, there's a system. You're talking about internal family systems. It's all in this. It's all a system of organization. A wise captain just works with the system with humility. yeah, I don't really know how things work inside, but hey, if I pray for something, or if I do an intention, or if I use meditation, and I ask that my resentment go away, and we're just going to practice that, then maybe the system has a way of processing that, navigating all the complex ego states that are getting in the way and all that stuff, which is way beyond your ability to really comprehend. Your chances of actually successfully dealing with some of the issues that you have goes way up. And so this is why programs like AA really lean heavily on 12 steps, on higher powers, on God and other spiritual kind of things, is because the sheer amount of information is not traversable by you. You can try, and if you succeed, let me know. But the interesting thing about infinite is it doesn't matter. To infinite, gazillion, trillion, trillion is the same as 10 trillion is the same as 10. That's the nature of infinity. It doesn't matter how big the number is. So, when you lean on things that use energy outside of you, you tap into that. That's why you can fix problems that are really big. That's kind of the trick. In ego state therapy, we facilitate it a little bit. But as a therapist, I quickly learned when I started doing trauma work with people, my pea brain can't understand much about someone. I worked with people for a long time and I still don't get much about them. And if I'm humble to that, that's okay. We can still help them. I don't need to know. In fact, the more you try to know, the more you know, you're the captain of the ship that says, I want to go north at 50 knots. And then you run down to engineering and you pull the tube and push the button, fire that guy who doesn't seem to do nothing, and turn on the coffee machine or something. Like, and everyone is in engineering like, good job, boss. Yeah, you really fixed that. And then once the captain leaves, the engineer's like, all right, we're 2 hours behind schedule. Okay, you got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. You know, the system starts to write itself. But it wastes time. So don't be that captain that goes and mucks around. You're just wasting your time. That's why the roots, you know, it's like that Few Good Men. I don't know if I even watched that movie. Few Good Men, yeah. It's Richard, what's his name? Nixon, or what's that? Huh? What's that? That's the main author.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, yeah. You want the truth. You really want the truth. You can't handle the truth. And that's where that comes from. Is no offense, but your pea brain consciousness probably cannot compute the truth of things at the root. It's too much information. There's no shame in that. It's just not what the system is able to accommodate. And so, what can you do instead? So let's just try this. Simple. So in AA, they have something that's called the resentment prayer. Has anyone used the resentment prayer?
I don't know what it is.
Hmm?
I don't know what it is.
I will teach you. I'm just wondering if anyone has used it, because we have introduced it limited. Does it work?
No.
So, here are the components of the resentment prayer. So, these are just some steps of some things that you can say to yourself and see if the resentment comes down a little. So what basically I've just told you is that resentments are organized in vast amounts of information that are hard to understand at any given time. Oftentimes people understand resentments like 5-10 years after they've had it, they've dealt with it. You need a really sober mind to understand roots of things, and you need a lot of time and space from those things. And then it'll hit you all of a sudden one day randomly, or never at all. That's how information gets processed. So with a resentment prayer, first thing we do in a resentment prayer is we acknowledge, this person that I resent. You think about the person. I can see this person I resent, or who caused me anger or whatever, is sick. Okay? That's the first step of it. Seeing a person is actually ill. So if someone triggered you in your head, and you're going to have to actually do this, because this is not you're not wired to do this. I'm not wired to do this. I go to the mad, but it is something you're capable of. So the first step is I can see this person is sick. Grant me the ability to show patience and tolerance that I would happily grant to somebody, to a sick friend. So to a friend of mine who is sick. That's step 2. Recognize that the person is sick, and then ask for some tolerance and pity and patience. That we all have sick friends, right? Friends who are ill. So we're just looking and just saying, hey, this person, my boss who's bothered me, let me see him as sick, and grant me the tolerance that you, the ability to view that as my sick friend. And then step 3, is to ask that resentment to be taken away. However you want to do that, whether you talk to Jesus, talk to God, talk to Vaheguru, however you do that. And step 4, very important step 4, help me to see how I can be useful to this person. So pray for the ability to be useful to that person. This person and you may say, why would I want to be useful to my boss or to my random worker? That's recovery. Recovery without making yourself useful to humanity is not recovery. You want to get out of the mess? Get busy making yourself useful to other people. And what you'll find is, as the universe sorts out your gazillion, trillion units of messed up organization, because you're coming and wanting to live in harmony. Harmonious relationships in the West, it's all about me, 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 me. But if you want to be in harmony with the universe, it's about let me serve you and trust that things will serve me instead. Without effort, without asking, that's harmony. That's an actual harmonious relationship. It's not, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And if you don't, I'm going to resent you for it. That's actually the source of lots of resentment is, I scratched your back, man. I'm still waiting 10 years later. 10 years later, I'm still waiting and I remember. Crazy making. So help me see how I can be useful to the other person. And then the final thing, pray for that person that they get everything you want for yourself. All you want for yourself, for the other person. So you might say to yourself, oh, that's kind of religious, Dr. Gill, and this and that. I'm just going to orient you to your problem. And if you don't have to believe me, but if you are open to the idea that your problem is beyond comprehension, then you may consider just sort of consider working with the powers that be that are created all that is, and maybe invite them in to solve some of your problems. So try it. Mentally, 5 steps. If you don't believe in God, then just do it like an intention. May I see if this person who's bothering me is sick. May I see Dr. Gill, he's bothering me. He's sick. And then just go through the steps. Because the wise people of AA, what they discovered is that this is the essential step. It's the resentments that create like a barrier, right? Resentments, they consider them a poison in AA, is because they create a barrier from liaising and inviting in that outside energy. Lots of people have resentments to God. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to deal with that. Oh, I thought Nam was a place I could go in spirituality. And it's like, come on. Like, call infinite whatever you like, but you're going to have to deal with the resentments of that. You're going to have to deal with your mommy and daddy issues that you've grafted onto God. You're going to have, like seriously, people. Because this is the problem. You really have to think about this. It's a multi-dimensional problem beyond your or any psychologist or psychiatrist's ability to conceive. And if you can find someone who can do it, yeah, you can find saints, but you know what saints do? They work in this medium. They work with this block, and then they kind of have their ways, right? Of dealing with that. They still work with it. Show me a saint that sits with you for 60 hours and psychoanalyzes you. They don't have that kind of time for you. They won't make it. They just won't. It's a waste of time. Because even if they spend 60 hours with you, they won't understand any more about this. So why would they? Instead, they'll help unblock you here. They'll tell you to do some prayers. They'll tell you to do this and that because it works. If you can let down some of your hyper-intellectualization. So, give this a try. Close your eyes. Okay? pick an easy resentment. Pick a resentment of someone like that's like a little bit distant from you. I mean, you could try it with someone closer to you if you like, and just say to yourself, okay, get the resentment in your head, feel the anger or whatever it is you got a little bit, and just say to yourself, God or higher power, or just, I can see, or may I see, this person is sick. This person that I'm resenting, or that has some kind of caused me a problem, I can see that this person is sick. Let me see this person is sick. Just say that to yourself, and then say to yourself, keep your eyes closed. God or whatever, grant me the ability to show this sick person the same patience and tolerance and sympathy and empathy that I would happily grant to a good friend who is sick. Say that. Say exactly that. Grant me the ability to say it a few times. If your concentration is kind of wavering, say it a few times. Until you feel the mental click. Because it will. So grant me the ability to show patience and tolerance that I would happily grant to a sick friend. When that click has happened, then go to the next one. How does that be? Ask that resentment, that anger, that, whatever, be taken away. And replaced with knowledge and desire of how I can be helpful to this sick person. Just say that a few times. May this resentment go away. May this anger go away. And show me how I can be helpful to this person. And then just say a prayer that person receive everything that you want for yourself or your family. Doesn't matter if you believe that. Just say it. And then thank whatever it is that you're talking to. And come back to the room. How was that? Did you do it? Did it work? Just reassess it. Think about that thing, that person, that whatever. And by the way, you can even target God with this. Eh? Lots of people are upset at God. It's great. I'm angry at God. People have targeted parts of themselves that they're angry at. You can. It's kind of funny, but when you start working, all the rules you know of logic, these are all pea-brain things. The world of the conscious and subconscious has no rules that you know in that same way. So there's different rules. They're very vast rules, and so you just gotta kind of, you can actually use this for your resentment towards God. Did it work though? Did you, something? Feel better? And that's all you gotta do. But you gotta repeat it. Put a little note in your pocket. Do it once an hour. Because you're gathering resentments that fast. But what's gonna happen is you're gonna start to be, the more you do it, your system will become automatic. It'll take some time, but hey, did you pay some therapist $400 for that feeling? Feel free to, no, just kidding, I don't need you for it. But the point is that, that's the funny thing in the West. If you didn't pay $400, it must be cheap. It must be worthless. I can't fix that for you. You're gonna have to sort of figure that out on your own. So that's all I have to say today on the topic of resentment. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because resentments are like a truckload of onions. We are self-centered creatures. Anybody who's self-centered, the universe isn't going to go your way and you're going to have a resentment. In Gurmukhi we call it krodh. Krodh. Anger. When the ego doesn't get its way, anger. Whether you're like a quiet, subdued kind of person or the flamboyant anger, anger is anger, and it just gets layered. And so it gets layered. Take a 3-year-old. What happens to a 3-year-old when you say, "Don't, no candy for you"? What do? So what do you think happens to a 25-year-old when the universe doesn't? Do you seriously believe there's no part of you that's like, "Meh"? Sorry to break it to you, but this is totally what you do. You just don't see it. It just gets layered away under properness and whatnot, but it doesn't change the fact that it's been generated and it's there, and that's what you're doing. That's why there's so many onions. But get busy peeling. This is a great tool. You use it lots, you're ahead. Just start with the resentments that you're conscious of. You know, if you have a parental resentment, that's a lot of information. But remember, infinite takes care of anything pretty quick if you're sincere in it. So that's the thing that I'll say about this. And so I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you.